Welcome to this in-depth no-head guide for Blazing Bull. In this video I'll break down the boss's attacks, how to deal with them properly and what key details to look out for. You might have seen runners sprinting behind the bull and just smack him in the butt, but I will show you a more efficient and more consistent strategy in this video. First, let's talk about some key data about the boss. Blazing Bull has 200 poise and a 25-second poise reset timer. This is going to be important because our strategy will heavily abuse Staggering Bull. A regular R1 deals 40 poise damage, a charged R1 80 poise damage and an air attack 20 poise damage. For this fight, the air attack does not concern us. Neither does the poise reset time, because there should never be time in this fight where we don't attack the boss for more than 25 seconds. Now you might assume that Bull will stagger after 5 R1s because 5 times 40 is 200. But Bull also has a locational poise damage multiplier based on where you hit him. A headshot will deal 1.2 times the poise damage, so 48 for an R1 and 96 for a charged R1. If you hit him anywhere else but the head, however, he will only take 0.4 times the poise damage. So an R1 only deals 16 and a charged R1 only deals 32. As you probably guessed already, we will focus on landing headshots. These multipliers also affect vitality damage, by the way. Based on the math we just looked at, we can achieve a stagger with 2 charged R1s to the head and an R1 anywhere else on the body. Bull also has 3 different stages of staggers. The shortest stagger happens between 100% and 80% HP and can be punished with 1 charged R1 or a normal R1. The longer stagger happens between 80% and 50% HP and can be punished with 2 charged R1s or 3 normal R1. The biggest stagger turns into the berserk, where he crashes into the wall. If we have an optimal fight, we can even get him to die from reaching 0 HP before he even gets to berserk. This was a lot of data now, but it was important to understand the boss better. Now let's get into the actual fight. Let's start with the approach. I will show you 2 ways of starting the fight, one for normal runs and one for runs with debuffs like Demon Bell and Charmless, where Bull can't one-shot the enemies in the arena. For the standard approach, deathblow the first enemy from behind, then move up to this area between these 2 rocks. The Bull will aggro and do a running headbutt attack to kill the remaining enemies. You might want to move backwards a bit, since one of the enemies can sometimes walk towards you and initiate an attack before Bull kills it. Simply outspace it. Then dodge the running headbutt and let Bull drift to start the standard loop of the fight. You can also use an Arco Sugar while aggroing the Bull. For the approach on a debuffed run, again deathblow the first enemy from behind. Then wait in place for the sword enemy on the right to fully notice you. Once he's aggroed, move over to the right around this grassy area. No specific position is needed. We just go to this area so that the enemies outside don't notice us while we deal with the enemy. Then simply dodge past him during his attack and start attacking until he's dead. He won't deflect your attacks, so there's no danger here. He will always do the same attack when approaching you. After that, go back to the area where you deathblow the first enemy and run a straight line to the spear enemy to deathblow him. The iframes from the deathblow animation will save you from Bull's initial attack, and from there you can start the fight. You probably saw that I looked down on the ground while approaching the spear enemy. This is important so that he aggroes later. If you don't do that, he will aggro too early and you miss the deathblow. Enemies can often behave differently when being off camera, which is the reason why this works. Now before we get into the actual fight, let me show you all of Bull's attacks first. He has a slow diagonal headbutt, a drift, which can actually be deflected, a swing to the left, a swing to the right, a swing to the left and right, a long-range headbutt into running away, a quick close-range headbutt without running away, a head shake into running away, and the charge he does at the end of the fight, which also has a hitbox. We want to be on the right side of the Bull to limit the moveset to only 2 moves. The swing to the right and the head shake into running away. We want to bait the swing and then punish with a thrust attack to its head, then doing an R1 backwards towards his right side again. You can also walk back without doing an R1, but I recommend doing it to get a stagger in only 2 attack cycles, 2 thrusts and 1 R1. I personally lock onto the head after dashing the attack and then lock off again when doing the R1 and repeat. You can also free aim it to get more consistent headshots based on how well you aim, since the lock-on can sometimes cause you to hit the neck instead of the head, therefore not getting the extra damage. Though I would say it makes for an easier time to just do the lock-on. Occasionally, at walls or in corners, you will be pushed in a weird way or the camera gets stuck, causing you to not get the lock-on. If that happens, you can just free aim the thrust, or even miss it completely, and then dash again on the normal timing. It's important to know that even when you can't see anything, you can still just dash the attack on timing, since it doesn't have a lot of active frames. Just make sure you're still dashing towards the bull's back, because the headshake will hit you if you don't dash out of range. This strategy technically also works when being on the left side of the bull, but it's not recommended because his swing attack to the left side goes closer to the side of the bull's body, and is therefore harder to dash and also puts you in a worse position for the next headshot. So always go to the right side. In case you ever end up on the left side by accident or intentionally because he was standing with his right side to a wall, simply just walk around his back to the other side and wait for the next attack. You have no attacks to fear there, he's still only able to do the swing and the headshake. This loop can technically be repeated infinitely, since the chance for him to do the swing never actually goes to 0. In reality, however, we will get headshakes and the bull will run away from us. Let's look into how we get into our wanted position again. The idea is that we run after him until he goes into a drift, and then being close to him when he finishes the drift to bait the quick close range headbutt attack. We simply dash it to his right side and are in position once again. Fairly simple on paper, but there's a few things to look out for here. The most important thing is that we are actually close enough to him when he's finishing the drift. Because if not, he will do the long range headbutt into running away, instead of doing the close range version where he does not run away. The long range version is also slightly delayed, so if you aren't close enough without realizing it, and dash on timing for the close range version, you will get hit after your iframes run out. Don't be afraid to go very close to him during the drift. Only has a hitbox on his back, not his head. You are pretty much free to hug him until he's done. Don't be afraid to bait the quick headbutt on weird terrain, like the stairs. The bull's body will go underground during the animation, but you can still dash it as always. Now for punishing the staggers. The optimal way of punishing is 1 thrust on the first stage stagger that he does between 100 and 80% health, and 2 thrusts on the second stage stagger that he does between 80 and 50% health. If you happen to accidentally buffer an R1, you can also do 1 R1 on the short stagger and 3 R1s on the longer stagger. Note that bosses are immune to taking poise damage for a short period of time after being staggered. In Bull's case, this means the first thrust you do as a punish during the stagger does not add poise damage dealt towards the next stagger. So during first stage staggers, you will need 2 thrusts and 1 R1 after punishing the stagger. On the second stage staggers, however, the second thrust you do does add to the poise damage dealt towards the next stagger. So on the next headshot punish, you can actually just thrust him again from the front, because you know he will stagger again, if you want to be optimal. If he starts up the next attack during that though, you might miss him with that thrust, so be careful. If you want to be a little safer here, you can do an R1 instead, which shouldn't miss. There's one more thing about the stagger stages that I haven't mentioned before. While it is true that the stages are 100 to 80, 80 to 50 and below 50%, there's actually another condition that has to be met to advance to the next stage. And that is 1 stagger in the new health range. So if you get below 80%, the first stagger you get will still be the first stage version. and only after that first stagger in the new range you will start getting the staggers of that stage. So don't be surprised if you get Bull below 50% health and you expect him to berserk on the next stagger, but he doesn't. There will always be a stagger from the previous stage before that. This is the general idea of the strat, and you will find it to flow naturally relatively quickly. Though as with every boss, it's the little things you have to know about to really be consistent at something. Let's look into them. One mistake that can easily happen when you're first learning this strat is that you chase after him too fast and accidentally get too close to his head while he's still running, which can instantly trigger one of the front attacks. Make sure the angle and range you stay at when chasing Bull is somewhat consistent, and you won't have problems with this. Another thing that can happen is what the community usually calls bulling, where he just runs and runs and runs in a circle and it seems like he never starts drifting. This is where the positioning when chasing him becomes even more important, since you have to chase him for an extended period of time. This bulling can technically be instantly stopped by going in front of him and baiting a front attack and then getting into position again. I would not recommend to do this though, since some of them are quite hard to dash and come out pretty fast. And we can obviously not deflect them since they're dealing fire chip damage to us. Instead, just keep chasing him as you normally would. He will eventually go into a drift, so you can continue business as usual. You can also just stop running altogether and wait for a moment. Then you just walk up to the standard position on the side and wait for him to start the loop again. The longest instance of bulling that I have ever seen was about 30 seconds, so you don't have to fear that you're gonna just run around in circles for 5 minutes. It's generally a rare occurrence anyway. In some rare cases, the bull might just walk up to you doing nothing for a moment. Just quickly get to its side and be ready to dash just in case. Sometimes he also circles towards you while you're on the side already. Walk the circle with him until he stops doing that and start the standard loop again. Sometimes, when the boss breaks something in the arena, especially the towers, you can barely see anything, making it quite hard to time the dash to get into loop again. If you're not confident in dealing with that, just keep a little distance to bait the long-range headbutt, dash around it and chase for the next drift as usual. The last really important thing to know is that Bull will occasionally destroy breakable structures in his way, not just by running through, but with an attack, usually the quick headbutt. Since there's a lot of breakable structures in this arena, it can cause the Bull to randomly do an attack out of nowhere. Here comes the proper positioning when chasing him into play again, so you don't just instantly get hit by being too close to him, in case that happens. The actual nasty thing about this behavior though, is that he sometimes does it even though there is seemingly no debris left unbroken or even close to him, usually near walls. And he can even cancel his own drift animation into that, for roughly the first half of it. I can't confirm the reason why this happens, but my theory is that debris near walls gets pushed into or at the wall geometry in a way that the boss counts as, I am allowed to destroy this. Whatever causes it on a technical level though, it can happen. There are certain places in the arena where I can say from experience that this behavior is much more likely than in the rest, as shown here. You should still always be aware of it happening though, as debris can technically fly everywhere when it gets destroyed by Bull. As for how we actually deal with that consistently, we want to keep our consistent positioning from when we chase him, even when he's starting to drift. As I was saying earlier, you can be very close to him during the drift, but you should only do that once he's roughly halfway done with the drift animation. Because otherwise there is a chance that he will cancel it into the debris destroying attack, especially in the places that I highlighted. So don't just blindly run towards his back and then get in front, but instead move in the direction where his head will end up after the drift, while keeping a small safety distance. This will prevent you from ever getting hit to this. A small side effect of this is that it's harder to get in front of him when he happens to drift to the other side randomly near a wall. You will still be able to do it with practice, but it's important to be aware of that, being possibly tight on the timing to get in front. I would advise that if you think you can't make it in time, you just let him drift his way and then let him go past you with the long range headbutt and then get into the standard position again. This covers the small little things that aren't immediately obvious when learning the boss. Speaking of positioning though, let's go through the front attacks real quick, just so you know what to do on each one to move into proper position again. On the slow diagonal headbutt, you can simply dodge directly to the right of the bull without problems. This attack has little active frames and an easy timing. On the head shake, get away from it. Don't try dashing past it to get into position early. Simply get away and either strafe around him, waiting for a drift, or react to the next attack. On the long range headbutt, get a bit of distance and dash it past him, then chase him until he drifts for standard loop again. On the quick close range headbutt, just dash it as usual, free loop. On the swing to the left and right, it is definitely possible to dodge directly into position, but your dash has to be timed quite well. This attack has quite the long active hitbox on each of the swings. You can go for it if you're confident, but I would advise outspacing them both and quickly sprinting to the right side of the bull to get into position again. As a little extra help, I will put 3 example kills for the boss in the video description. 1 for normal damage, 1 AP1 Demon Belt Charmless, and 1 New Game Plus 7 AP1 Demon Belt Charmless. Note that the New Game Plus 7 kill will have different stagger setups because poise increases with higher game cycles. I will also include a hitbox showcase for the boss in the video description. This concludes this Know It guide. As always, there's other strats out there and also faster ones, but I wanted to make a guide that makes it possible to know it the boss with very high consistency. Maybe in the future there will be even more discoveries that make this guide incomplete, but this should always be a good foundation regardless. Feel free to put any questions you have in the comments. Thanks for watching.